Good evening and welcome to North Carolina Vietnam Veterans Incorporated and VBA special show tonight. Hope you were able to tune in for our last show where John Rowan talked about Agent Orange and other herbicides in Vietnam. My name is Bill Dixon. My co-host, Mr. Bob Matthews, is with me tonight, and we have a very special guest. I asked for the best veteran service officer out there, and I was directed to this gentleman, Tony Musolino, and been talking with him a little bit before the show came on. If you have questions, be sure to call in or come in on Skype and let us know. The number to call in is 919-518-9773. We've already got some callers. Let me introduce Tony, and then we can go into the callers. Tony, we're going to be having some people call in with questions and so forth. Thank you for being here. I'm going to let this caller give us say their thing, and then we can kind of carry on from there. Caller, go ahead. Caller, you there? We lost a caller. A while ago, I mentioned something about Agent Orange, and you told me that was just one of the things. Would you kind of give us a little bit of rundown about the herbicides and so forth that was used there? We just kind of lump everything into Agent Orange, and it was not necessarily the number one.
Well, thank you for having me here tonight. I'm going to do the best I can to help you. The idea that Agent Orange is the prime chemical or herbicide that was used in Vietnam is not true. We had actually 15 herbicides that were used. There's a group called the rainbow herbicides that were used by the British in Malaysia, and they were pretty effective, so we used them. The idea we would use Orange as the culprit from the herbicides that we had there. The Sandia Laboratories made a statement some time ago that if the VA were to turn around and say that all these other herbicides that are involved, the 15 that were there, if we were to start looking at all the illnesses and the diseases that come from them, it would be a huge bag of worms. So what the VA has done is they have turned everything into Agent Orange. And I'm not one to say that all of the things that the 17 or 18 presumptive things that Agent Orange has is what has been caused by Agent Orange, which in fact was dioxin. Agent Orange was the stripe on the barrel. I think if you look over my shoulder, you'll see the barrel there.
Yes.
That's what they looked like. And because of that, that's where the name came from. The other herbicides all had something in them that could do something to us. And so the VA has tried to lump it all together. And in doing that, I believe they've missed some of us that have some diseases or some illnesses or some sicknesses that was caused by the others. The Agent Orange Act of 1991 very clearly says Agent Orange and other herbicides. But for some reason or other, the VA kind of shies away from the other herbicides.
All right. And I believe you said it was arsenic in Agent Blue. Was it Blue that had arsenic in it, you said?
Yes, Agent Blue was one of the chemicals or herbicides that was used, and the primary mission of Agent Blue is to kill the rice fields. We used to throw hand grenades in the rice paddies, and we thought that would kill the plants, but all it did was displace them. So they found out that arsenic was a plant or arsenic chemical would kill the rice field or the rice plant. Mm-hmm. So they used Agent Blue, and Agent Blue contained cacodyl CaCODLYIC acid, which is arsenic. Mm-hmm. There's no question about it. We've got doctors and people that have said that arsenic causes bladder cancer and other things that are there.
All right. And bladder cancer is not one of the supposedly diseases, is it?
No, bladder cancer is not considered one of the presumed things under Agent Orange. But what the Sandia Laboratories said was that they determined with irrefutable scientific evidence that the arsenic acid, primary component of Agent Blue, caused bladder cancer in Vietnam veterans.
Mm-hmm.
They say the claim is amended to include Agent Blue, White, and Super Orange. So if you've ever put in a claim for bladder cancer and it's been denied because of Agent Orange, well, go back and say it was Agent Blue. And they say that there's irrefutable evidence to that point.
Okay. Just so people will know that are watching the show and tuning in, you are a Vietnam vet yourself.
Yes.
You served in 1966, I believe.
That's it, 1960.
1966, okay. And where were you?
Wait, 1966.
Yeah,
Let's get it right.
1966, yeah. Where were you in 66?
Well, I was around Cameron Bay.
Okay. All right. Bob, you have a question for
I do.
Tony Wawa?
Tony, very interesting what you've said so far. And one of the things I wanted to ask you was this is there's so much misinformation. A lot of our veterans go in to file a claim for Agent Orange, and they're very scared. They don't have enough information, and they need a service officer they can trust, someone that will look out for their welfare, and someone who will explain to them exactly what they have or do not have. So what would you say would be the first step for a Vietnam veteran that is pursuing an Agent Orange claim?
Well, when a veteran comes into our office here in Wilmington, the first thing we ask them is, what's wrong with you? A lot of them say they have PTSD and other things, but they'll tell us pretty much what there is. And then the thing that we have to do is to prove that, number one, they were in Vietnam, because that's the way we can get service connection for the herbicides that were there. If we do that, we get their military records. We go to the Military Personnel Records Division in St. Louis, and using a Form 180, we get that. Once we got that, we find out what they did. Let me kind of make it simple so we can follow through on it. Supposing that when you were in Vietnam, you fell off the back of a deuce-and-a-half truck and had a compound fracture of your knee, and that was put back together, and over the years it bothered you and was not too well, and now it's to the point where they're either going to have to put it amputated. So we can show that you did something in Vietnam, or you did something while you were in service that is now bothering you, so that can be service connected. If we talk about the different types of chemicals that were used, the herbicides, if you have type 2 diabetes, it's presumed that type 2 diabetes is caused by Agent Orange. Now, you know, I've got esophagus cancer, and that's not considered a presumed thing from Agent Orange. But if you look at it, there's a secondary disease from all of these things. And with type 2 diabetes, according to the records that I've read, there are 24 different types of cancer that you can get if you have type 2 diabetes, and esophagus cancer is one of them. When you have something like that, you must be able to prove, number one, that you have type 2 diabetes, that you were in Vietnam, and that the medical studies that have been made show that your esophagus cancer is secondary to the diabetes. And once you put that all together and get a doctor to say that it's as likely as not that that's what happened, then it goes into the VA. The VA then looks at it and they say, wait a minute, this is kind of far-fetched, but we'll have to do. So they send you to an organization, or outsourcing organization called QTC, who does an evaluation on their own. Now, QTC can come up and say, yes, we agree, or we disagree. And that's the way the process goes. The idea is, if your doctor, who is a professional, makes a statement that it's likely as not that your type 2 diabetes caused the esophagus cancer, and the QTC doctor says no, it's not as likely as not, then according to the VA rules, you, the veteran, it should be given to you as a service-connected disability. That's yes, it's not slow, or it's not, excuse me, it's not a long time, but for a guy waiting a year and a half is a long time. They are now starting to pick up the time frame, and it's getting a little bit better. But we have had claims that were up to 4 and 5 years long.
Well, Tony, this is my leads into my next question. Is the people that have talked to me are very impatient and they're very frustrated. So if a man or woman has their DD 214 with them, and they have their service record, and they have their examination from their local doctor, and they take that in to see a service officer, what else should they bring with them?
Well, basically, that's all you can bring. Uh, I mean, they've got to have something that shows that their current doctor says, yes, indeed, you have this condition, you're being treated for it. Your medical records show that it's presumed or it happened to you while you were in service. You put that together. The way we do it here in Chapter 885 is we sit down and have the veteran fill out a Form 526. And in the back of that, he or she sits down and says, this is what happened, this is the way it was, and this is what I have, and this is what's bothering me now. And then we attach that to that A2122. And I'll give you all these numbers. I mean, they'll probably mean nothing until you sit down with a service officer. And I suggest you do that rather than wait until you do it by yourself and mess it up. But at any rate, you give him the power of attorney to work only on your case, nothing else. In other words, he can't change your address or do anything like that. All he can do is get information on your claim. Then you put down the doctor statements. This is what my doctor says. And you fill out a form for the VA to be able to go to your doctor and verify that. Once they've done that, they've looked at what you had when you were in the service or what you were subjected to while you were in the service, what your current condition is, what your doctor says, and then they go to the QTC or make the decision on their own, and it comes back to you. Once it comes back, if it's been approved, you're all right. If it's been disapproved, you have an opportunity to submit a notice of disagreement. And with that notice of disagreement, you tell them why you are disagreeing with what they say. And I mean, there's a lot of ways you can do that. You send that back in, and then there's a standard way where they just review it and come back and say yes or no, or they send it to a review officer. At a review officer board, you can go with your service officer and present your case. If it's disapproved, then you go to the Board of Veterans Appeals, which is in Washington, D.C., and that's an entirely different process.
Well, Tony, thank you. That was an excellent answer. Thank you.
Tony, let me ask you this question. Right now, we have veterans who are going to the VA hospital to get a VA card, and they are told they're making too much money. They can't get a card because they're making too much money. How do they submit a claim for Agent Orange or any of the chemicals and problems if they can't get a VA card to get into the VA system?
Well, to begin with, getting into the VA system and putting in a VA claim is apples and oranges. When you want to get into the VA system, that's the medical part of it. You need medical care. Going into the VA claims department is a whole different place. We have a regional office, which is here in Winston-Salem, and a very nice lady named Rawls. Miss Rawls is the director of it. I had the pleasure of meeting her the other night. And there's another man named Chapman, who is now the service officer, who seems to be very efficient and also a nice person to talk to, and it seems to be efficient. As a matter of fact, they answered some questions for us and came back with immediate answers, which was something that's never done before. But at any rate, when you want to go to get into the military or the medical system, you have to go in there, and if you do make, it's pretty much means tested. They have 8 categories, and I couldn't go down the whole 8. I don't have anything in front of me that says it, but the number 1 is when you're 100% and things like that. And number 8 is if you make, you're a veteran and you just need to get into the system. Then they look at how much money you make. And it's a mean testing thing. They say, okay, you can afford to pay so much and something like that, and they don't want to give you a card. The way it is, if you have a service-connected disability, if there's something that you can apply to the VA regional office for service connection, and you get service connection, say you get 10%, then you can get a disability or a VA medical card.
So it comes down to if you think you have a problem, then you need to go talk to a veteran service officer and work with them to get it taken care of.
That's right. You get yourself into the system. You get yourself a percentage, a rated percentage, a disability percentage, and then that puts you in the system because you're there. Now, let's be clear about this. If you get, say, they determine that you have type 2 diabetes and you get a percentage disability for it, you can get a card and go in, and the VA will cover you immediately for those things. They will also give you treatment for other things, but there's going to be a cost attached to it, and I'm not able to give you the answer to the cost on that.
Okay. All right.
Tony, changing gears for a moment, what procedure would you advise, excuse me, the spouse and the children of a deceased veteran when they come in, a woman, a spouse, a wife, or the children of a veteran? What should they bring with them?
Well, the primary thing that the wife has to prove is that she's married to him. I mean, that's number one. And number two is there's this thing called indemnity and DIC, dependency indemnity compensation. Excuse me, I have to figure out some of these things. Dependency indemnity compensation, which means that there's a payment made to the spouse or the children if the husband had 100% disability and had for 10 years and did not die of that. But if he died for his disability, because of his disability, the spouse is entitled to dependency indemnity compensation. She has to fill out the necessary form to get into that. She has to prove that she's married to him, that she's been married to him for a while, and that she needs the help, or that she's entitled to it because of the rating that he had, or that he died because of the disease or his disability. That also comes with a death certificate.
Okay, because the woman I talked to was very intimidated by this process, and this will certainly help her. Thank you.
Well, it has. I think just by the virtue of the fact that the Veterans Administration there, and so many things have been said about the Veterans Administration, both good and bad.
Yes.
Some years ago on 60 Minutes, one of the veterans that was there made the most frightening statement that has lived with the VA for years and years. He said the VA motto is delay, deny, and wait until they die. And some people feel that that's the case. Now, I don't believe that. I believe that they try the best they can and they do the best they can. And sometimes they get overwhelmed.
Yes.
And because of these statements and the things that are there and the horror stories that are put out, veterans and dependents are kind of worried. The other thing is that people just don't know what they can get. There's educational benefits for dependents and all of these things that are available that nobody knows about. It's like a big dark secret, and people are afraid to ask.
Well, Anthony, I want to continue just a little bit on this, because if a spouse goes in and she brings everything that you ask her to bring in, and is still intimidated, a little bit timid about things like this, would you advise her to take somebody with her, a relative, a sounding board, perhaps a child with her for reassurance, or should she go alone?
You never go alone. If you got somebody to go with you, always take them with you. I think that you and I are old enough to know that we can go into a doctor's office and say something, and a doctor looks at us and says, you two old guys don't know what you're talking about. But if we have somebody younger with it that says, wait a minute, he needs help or they need help, it's a support for us and for them. Now, if the widow comes in and she says, I have nobody, please help me, we sit there and we work with her. There is no question. We go to the VA with her. We go to the doctors with her. We tell her what to do and get her everything that's necessary. And we're the sounding board. That's what the Vietnam veterans are all about. never again will one veteran abandon another, and that means the spouses.
Thank you so much.
So it all comes down to always find yourself a good service officer and tell them what they need to know to go out so they can help you, because that's what they're out there for, is to help the veterans and help the veterans' family to get everything they have coming to them. That's why the veteran service officer is so important in the whole system.
That's true. And I'm just a little bit partial to this. I've seen veteran service officers across the board. None of them are bad, but the Vietnam veterans have how shall we say it, a bond of brotherhood with one another. We want to take care of each other. Now we have Iraq, Afghanistan, and Desert Storm. We've kind of taken them under our wings to help them. And it's something that, I guess because of the background of our war, we kind of sympathize and empathize with them, and we take it a little bit one step further to see that our people and the veterans from Afghanistan, Iraq, and Desert Storm get everything that they deserve honestly, fairly, and as quickly as possible.
Well, sometimes if you look at some of the veterans magazines or other things, there's organizations out there who charge a fee. I believe the veteran service officers do not charge a fee. Am I correct?
A veteran service officer cannot charge a fee. The only time a fee is paid, I believe, is when a lawyer gets in there and he makes some deal and the veteran is willing to go ahead and pay him. Fees for applications for service connection and disability are not something that the VA will support, and they recommend that you do not pay it. As a matter of fact, I, as a service officer, and none of the service officers I know will accept money, gifts, nothing. I mean, once in a while, one of them will bring me a cup of coffee, but I could get up and get that myself.
Yeah, we have a question, honey.
Tony, Buddy is asking in the chat, after prostate cancer, what avenues does a veteran have?
If you have prostate cancer is one of the presumed conditions under Agent Orange. You get your doctor's certificate stating what you have, what type of prostate cancer you have, what action was taken for it, and submit that with your claim. It's a presumed thing, and it's a pretty automatic thing if you have the doctor saying you had it and what was done. Now, if you have prostate cancer and your doctor says, well, it's right at this point in time, maybe we should just watch it and see, because prostate cancer is a slow growth thing. Let's take a look at it. You make sure that the doctor puts in there that, yes, indeed, we're observing it, we're taking care of it, and it's a kind of wait and see thing. And the VA will give you a percentage rating for it. And after you have an operation or whatever is done, they keep you at a 100% disability until your PSA rating, or it goes down to what is within a normal range, and then they drop you down to 20 or 40% depending.
Very good.
So the important part is to get your stuff together and go see a veteran service officer. Don't try to do it yourself. Go see someone who that's what they do, and save you a lot of time as far as getting the process done and so forth. And you've got these people who are trained out there to help you and give you the assistance. Don't sit back and worry about. That way you can eliminate some of the time elements, because you as a veteran service officer know what kind of package to put together to explain to the VA what that veteran's problems are. So if they meet with you, then you can put it together, everything they have, instead of having to come back and piecemeal probably.
Well, that's a case as a veteran, or sometimes it happens. A claim will go in, just a regular 526. This is a claim for compensation, and the thing will say, I have prostate cancer and I was in Vietnam. That's in the remarks column. And that gets sent into the VA. There's no medical report there that shows he really has it. And they'll come back to the veteran and say, look, you didn't give us that information. Please, get it for us. So when you go to your VA, your veterans officer, your service officer, he sits there and says, okay, you told me you have prostate cancer. I'm not a doctor. I can't prove that. Show me what your doctor says. Go to your doctor and get it in writing, what you have, what the treatment is, and then we'll attach it to your claim and send it back in with the proof that you were in Vietnam. And if you don't do that, then they're going to come back, and that's a delay in the claim, and it's frustrating.
I think that's why we have a lot of veterans out there who get frustrated.
Sure.
Because they try to do it themselves rather than go talk to a veteran service officer. All veteran service officers are not created equally. There's good of them, just like in anything else. You just need to find one that ask around to some of your friends and other veterans and talk to them about the service officer they work with and make sure that you get one that has the proper training and knows what they need to do.
Tony.
Well,
Oh,
my feeling on it is this, and excuse me a minute, I'll interrupt you there.
No problem,
My
buddy.
feeling
No
on
problem.
it is this. As a service officer, I can sit down and I can do all the claim for you. I can go to your doctor, I can get the information because I have your power of attorney. But the question I have is, if I do that, what are you doing? So what we do here in Chapter 885 is we keep the veteran involved in the entire process. If the veteran comes in and says, I have this and this wrong with me, and his medical records show and his military records show that it happened while in service or it was by the service, then we make him and get us a state what it is. Have the doctor tell us what it is and tell the doctor, does he believe that what you have now was caused by that? That keeps the veteran involved. That keeps the veteran informed. And most of all, when you go to a service officer and a service officer does something for you, make absolutely sure that you get a copy of everything that service officer sends to the VA. Because the VA normally does not come back to the service officer. He comes back to the veteran. And he says to the veteran, we have your claim and we have this and this. Do you have any other information you want to submit? Now, in my mind, that's the VA saying, tell us something else so we got a little bit of time more to work on your claim. If you don't have anything else, you don't have to submit anything else. So before you answer anything to the VA, go back to your service officer and say, what does this mean? Look at the records that he had that he did for you and submitted so that you know what it is. The other thing is, if your service officer retires or moves and he leaves, you don't have a copy of the paperwork and you come to me and I say, I don't know what you did. So the point is, it's covering all bases.
Sure.
Make sure a copy of everything that's submitted to the VA in your name.
Tony, that is excellent advice. What you said earlier speaks volumes. We came back from Vietnam, it was a very lonely feeling. With your information today, with somebody on your side, it builds your confidence, it builds your willingness to go forward and discuss what's wrong with you. That's a great thing to say, to include the Afghan vets, Desert Storm, and the younger guys today, and the young women today. But I'd like to shift gears for a moment, if I could, Tony, and move into the children of the veterans. We've talked about the spouses, we've talked about the veterans. Now, can we move into the procedure for the children?
Well, the VA approves for veterans, the male veterans, only spinal bifida. Nothing else. They say, Agent Orange didn't anything else. Now, to me, this is rather ridiculous, but it's humorous if you think about it. The VA comes up with 18 different types of illnesses or whatever you have for females. In other words, there's 18 things that they will approve for a child born of a female Vietnam veteran. But at the bottom of that list of things, and I'm reading exactly what it says, these diseases are not tied to herbicides, including Agent Orange or dioxin exposure, but rather to service in Vietnam. Now, who was it that thought of that? I mean, what is it, If it wasn't the service, if it was just a service in Vietnam, then all of us should be that way. If it wasn't the Agent Orange or the dioxin or the herbicide exposures that caused this. What, just by going to Vietnam did that? Tourists could say the same thing.
Exactly.
Now, as far as the children of Vietnam is concerned, we have now a form that is being submitted to the VA. It's 3004, I believe it is. And it's a form that the children fill out or the parents fill out saying, this is my child and this is what happened. My father was in Vietnam. The thing is, the Children of Agent Orange, which is a separate organization, has come up with, I think, 6 different types of diseases directly from the father or the Vietnam, and over 900 to the grandchildren. Now, no real studies have been made saying that these are actual things that are there. They're just saying these are what these kids and these are what the parents and the grandparents are reporting of the child. Studies have been made that this is that and that, but no one has actually sat down and said, like we have a man here in our area, he has bone cancer, he has all kinds of cancer. His son died of bone cancer. His grandson has bone cancer. His daughter has thyroid cancer, and he had a child born with spinal bifida. Now, you know, all of these things come from Agent Orange, and you've got the father has it, the son has it, and the grandson has it. That's a follow through. It's a DNA type thing, and doctors and studies have all said that this happens. The Reagan report, when they killed it, they said we can't afford to have these birth defects made out. The Zumwalt reports and all the other reports are saying this is it. Now, the VA is not, you know, they may be a lot of things, but they're not really that slow in what they do. They come up with an idea that they said, wait a minute now, all these people are saying things that the kids have, and eventually the government's going to get involved in it. So maybe we better get some information on it. I read a statement that one of the congressional bills was, it said, if this bill is passed, you have X number of days or X number of months to start collecting information and show us that you have it. And then you have an X number of months to show that you're taking care of it, and you have less than a year to have it fully implemented. Now, the VA is recognizing that eventually it's going to become a law, that they are going to have to be able to say, yes, these kids need to get what, you know, is there. So what they have done is they've put out this form. It's called VA Form 21-0304, and it's there for veterans children with birth defects. It's a form that's going into the VA. It's not going to get you any money. It's only going to be a record. It's going to say, all right, here I am. I have bone cancer, and I'm 12 years old. Why do I have it? Or I have type 2 diabetes, and I'm 10 years old. All of these things are there, and they have these forms, and they're categorizing them so that when the law is passed, and I hope it's passed pretty quick, that says you have to be able to show that you've got some information. The VA is going to say, we've already connected it, and we have it, and here's what we have. And this is what we plan on doing about it. In other words, they're trying to get ahead of what the law is going to be.
Thank you.
Tony, again, Buddy is asking a question here, and I think you just answered the first part. How does dioxins affect our children and grandchildren? But then he's saying, are new generation medical professionals knowledgeable?
Would you repeat that, please?
He says, are new generation medical professionals knowledgeable about this?
About
No.
Agent Orange and,
About Agent, yeah.
and Agent Blue and so forth.
I don't think so. Let me just go over to one other thing. The Plastic Surgeons Association of the United States came out and said that stem cell carcinoma is a product of Agent Orange, because 80% of the veterans they've seen in the last 8 years or 9 years that have been in Vietnam have it, and they're blaming it on Agent Orange. But yet, Agent Blue, arsenic, causes that, and sunlight. So these doctors and law or nurses and so forth, they have an idea that something is there, but they've never been told, or they've never gotten involved in it. Now, our state president, Rossi Nance, has made an appointment for us to go and speak to a group of doctors and lawyers in February and tell them what it is and the way it is. And hopefully that's a beginning, so that we can let them know what to look for.
Thank you.
That answered, David, answer your question?
Buddy.
But okay. Didn't get a response there, but thank you. Again, if you're out there, if you want to ask a question or make a comment, dial 919-518-9773 or computers 2K voice on Skype. You can come in and do that. Or if you're tuning in, be sure to log in with so that you can ask questions and whatever, but you have to log in so we can kind of keep up with who's there and ask you questions. So be sure, don't just go in and watch. Go ahead and log in. If you're bashful about your name, make up a name. Make it your name can be Chuhoy or whatever you want it to be. But come in and ask your questions. We've got an expert here to answer your questions about veteran service officers helping you and different benefits and so forth that are out there. You just got to go to the right place. It'll save you a lot of time, a lot of hassle, and a lot of grief to do it the right way the first time. And you got people ready, willing, and able out there to help you. And it's you need to step forward and ask your questions. What we're here for.
Buddy says good answer.
Buddy said that was a great answer. So,
Tony, I have one more category to cover.
Okay.
And thank you very much for, I think the bottom line is be courageous, be prepared, and get in there and take somebody with you as a sounding board. We've talked about the Vietnam veteran. We've talked about the spouse or wife of the veterans and the children. This is a personal opinion question to you as far as responsibility for Agent Orange and the dioxins. What do you think we owe the Vietnamese?
Say that last question again.
How do you feel? What do you think we owe the Vietnamese population for their problems in their country today?
Well, I feel sorry. The United States is getting blamed for all of that, but they have to go back and look. President Thieu, the Prime Minister, the President of Vietnam, when we first got there, asked the United States government if there was some way or other that they could defoliate the trees so that he could see the Viet Cong coming from the north. We did that. Now, I'm going to admit this, we got carried away with it. Monsanto, he's come back and said dioxin is pretty bad, don't use it. If you do it diluted, and we didn't do that. We really put it there real heavy. But the Vietnamese government asked for help. We did it. We probably overdid it. I think we should help. But one more time, we will not leave our own people behind. And I think that we should look at our people and take care of our people here, because our guys were over there. They subjected themselves to all of those chemicals and were told that they were harmless. And they've come back to diseases, miscarriages. I mean, according to the records that show there's been more miscarriages between Vietnam veterans and families than any of the others. We have a legacy, and the legacy is Agent Orange. And I think that somehow or other we should look to our own people and do for them as much as humanly possible while still reaching out and helping the others. But again, I'm a little bit one way about this. I'm a Vietnam veteran. I'm fortunate my family was raised before I went to Vietnam. I know people whose children are in bad shape because of it. I think they need help, and I think that when they start saying we're going to give help to somebody, I think our people should be given primary consideration and then do with the best we can from what we can do to help those people.
Thank you.
Tony, there's I believe there's a couple of bills out there right now about getting more coverage and so forth. What can the average vet who would like to get active and get all these things, especially for the children of Vietnam vets, what can the average vet do to get his congressman, whatever, to step up and help the veteran and his family?
Well, I appreciate that the Vietnam Veterans of America are pushing the bills that are there to get help done. But I have to say this, and maybe again, this is just my opinion. We have dozens and dozens of studies that say all of these illnesses and sicknesses come from the DNA, and it comes from a Vietnam veteran. In the last town hall meeting we were at, the father was there with his daughter, and he broke down crying because of the condition she had. It was not him, but what can we thing is, instead of running more studies and saying, let's see whether this happens or that happens, let's get a group of professional medical people together and say, okay, these are the studies that have been made. This is what we know happens. These things are transmitted. Now, if some kid comes up with mumps or measles or something like that, that can't be considered. But if he's got type 2 diabetes and he's years old, or some other disease that's common to the presumptive conditions of Agent Orange and the other chemicals, then these are the things that they should be looking at and taking care of those kids. And I think that we should say to our congressmen and senators, pass bills that will put the things together and get it together that we have it done. But primarily, let's have somebody sit down and look at what it is and come up with a list of things, of medical conditions, and saying these are direct results of the father or grandfather being in Vietnam. It's a result of Agent Orange, and let's do something for these kids. Remember this, right now, I know 10 or 12 families who have problems with their children. I know one family, the two girls that are there can't keep their checkbooks up to date. They have no way of, they can't add, subtract. They have no sense of value. The mother is keeping the checkbooks for them. What happens when the mother is dead, when the mother's gone? Who's going to help them? If you have others that can't walk, that need help, who's going to be there for them? Why don't we ask our government, we don't have to say go in there and give them $1 million or something like that, but just let's see that they get taken care of properly and adequately depending on what their circumstances are.
Take the tests we have now and sit down and look at them and actually study the tests they've already done and see what they come up with rather than keep doing tests. If they don't use the information they've already got, another test is not going to make any difference because it keeps right on saying the same thing. Just nobody's grabbing the bull by the horns and using the test they already have. It's basically what I think you just said.
That's reinventing the wheel. I mean, we've got studies saying this is what happens, and so now we're going to go back in and have another study saying this is what happens again, so we can study that study and do another study.
Well, that kind of goes back to what we said a while ago: deny, deny, deny,
delay, and wait till they die. Go ahead and finish it.
That's where a lot of that. I've heard that since the day I joined the Army. Something like this is the reason they keep studying that is part of what brings that out. There's a lot of good folks out there in the VA hospitals. I know they've been getting a bad rap right now with everything that's going on, but the vast majority of everyone I've ever worked with at VA hospital is there to help and do anything they can to help. And there's help out there for veterans if they just, again, talk to the veteran service officer, get all the information they can possible together before they go talk to the veteran service officer so that they can show how they're affected and so forth. Is the thing is to be prepared when you go talk to these people so they can be help you in any way they can. Bob, you had a question, Carol?
I did. Tony, I want to broach another subject if possible. As Bill mentioned earlier in the show, our show is called Lessons Vietnam, and we have an opportunity, and we reach students daily throughout the country. We've taught thousands and thousands of students the whole Vietnam story from soup to nuts. We have never approached in the classroom the Agent Orange dilemma. Maybe we should. How about your opinion on that?
I didn't quite understand your question, as I'm kind of hard of hearing. So would you just say it a little slower, please?
Yes, I will. Tony, we have the opportunity, as I'm a retired teacher, and we teach teachers to teach Vietnam, the whole story, from soup to nuts, everything about Vietnam, from the beginning to the end. We have not spent a whole lot of time in the classroom or in the lesson plans on the dilemma of Agent Orange. Should we approach that subject in America's classrooms?
That's what the high school students, giving them the knowledge of Agent Orange and its problems, maybe so that they don't have the problems like the burn pit problems with the present day soldiers, basically educating the public overall on Agent Orange and its challenges. Some
time ago, I have a friend who's a teacher. I mean, she's still my friend, but it was some time ago she brought up the point. She brought up the point that she had 3 or 4 children in her class were disruptive, kind of hard to get along with, short-tempered, and all the rest of this stuff, and they didn't know what to do with them. So I asked her, I said, find out whether the father or grandfather was in Vietnam. And she said, why? I said, well, check it and see. I said, your husband was in Vietnam and you have a problem with your daughter. Why don't you check and see what's with them? Well, she did. She did some checking, and 2 of the 3 kids' parents or grandparents had been in Vietnam, and they were able to approach it that way. Yes, I believe that schools should be told, teachers should be made aware of what happens with the DNA in the children of Vietnam and the grandchildren. And I don't know how much we can tell the kids. We can say, look, your granddad or your dad was in Vietnam, and this is probably what's wrong with you. But will it help? The point is, we've got to, as adults, we have got to stand up and say, look, do it right. And by telling the doctors and the nurses, the politicians and the teachers, and the general public. That's why the Vietnam veterans now are holding town hall meetings all over the country, telling people about Agent Orange and what it is and what it can do and what it's with the families. The one we had here in Wilmington, it was amazing. People were getting up and telling us what was with their children. The same thing happened in Asheville, and it was, oh my God, your kid is doing that, so is mine. And the other thing is, we got to remember, when we came back from Vietnam, how many of us wore our uniform once we left the base? Not many, because, we were looked at as some type of animal or some type of, something we didn't want to be. So we've learned to keep our mouth shut. We don't talk too much about it. And now, as we're getting older, we're starting to say things. And the things we're saying has got to be said loud, clear, because, it isn't going to be long. There's not going to be many of us left.
Tony, we got another question from a viewer.
Buddy is saying that it might be a good idea if you could speak a little about systemic heart disease.
Systemic heart disease in Agent Orange.
What was that now?
Systemic heart disease is related to Agent Orange.
Well, ischemic heart condition is actually coronary artery disease. And yes, indeed, it is now a presumed condition. If you have a doctor's statement or if you had a heart attack, get that information, get it to your service officer, get your DD-214 showing that you were in Vietnam, submit that, and it's a presumed condition.
The VBA has some great pamphlets. If you will go online with the VBA and pull up the pamphlets that are there, there's some great information on those pamphlets. The VBA has been in the forefront of studying Agent Orange and its problems. There's some fantastic information out there, different information. One of them is this one. I think our last show we showed several others of the information. But if you go to Agent Orange Reviewed and information that's out there, VBA has, you can get a lot of information out there. So when you do go talk to a veteran service officer, you're better prepared and they are able to help you more. Just go online, VBA, and go through some of the pamphlets and so forth. That's who Tony works with, is the VBA. He's a member, and they're ones kind of keeping the Agent Orange forefront and studies and trying to get these laws passed and helping a lot of veterans. People like Tony who are stepping forward on his time, his efforts to get out there and learn and do what needs to be done with Agent Orange and helping veterans. I know Ross in there as well. He's super guy, and I think as president of VBA in North Carolina, he's out there with people like Tony, going to do a lot of good and getting the information out. And I want to salute Ross and Nance and Tony both tonight for coming out and helping us. We've got some more time, Tony, so if you got something else you can tell us about Agent Orange, Agent Blue, or anything else that we need to know for the people out there who are viewing this, as far as getting claims or information that's coming up about town hall meetings that are going to be live on site, I'd appreciate it if you could do that.
Well, I just want to throw this out to the people that are in around Wilmington area. I think we have 8 billboards that are these flashing type ones. It says 8 seconds and it gives you an advertisement. Rossi Nance and Mac Mitchell. Mac Mitchell is the president of Chapter 885, and Rossi Nance is the state president. Together, they put together a thing that these flashing lights go on. It says, Agent Orange dioxin kills children. And it's flashing on, and it's going to be there for a whole month. So we figure around here that there's people going to be asking questions.
There you go.
Here in Wilmington, we're at 801 Princess Street. Come on in on Tuesday or Thursday, and somebody will talk to you and help you. If it's not me, it's one of the other guys that are there. We'll do everything we can to help you and get you the information you need. If not, every county in North Carolina has a state veterans or a county veterans office. Go talk to those county veterans offices. They need the work, really. I mean, they're pretty busy now, but they can use some more. They're efficient, they're effective, and they'll do the job that's necessary to get your paperwork in. If you can't find a Vietnam veteran, there's the DAV, there's other organizations, and the North Carolina State Veterans people will see that you get help. And you can go to your county office, and they've all got service officers.
Tony, I want to mention one thing, and thank you again, because you have kickstarted something tonight that is very important for Vietnam veterans to talk to each other, ask questions, take notes, write down the things you said tonight. And like you said, when we came home years ago, no uniform, it was time to be silent. Well, now it's time to be heard. And I think it's time that we talk to all of the veterans we know, all the spouses we know, and give them the information and take the advice you gave us tonight. Ask questions, do your homework, see your service officers. If you're affected or if your friends are, get some answers, get busy, get active, and get going on this subject, and we can solve this problem together.
That is the Vietnam veterans we're talking to, the Afghan veterans, we're talking to the Iraqi veterans, and the Desert Storm people. We've heard of all of this Desert Storm syndrome and that. The VA has gotten away with that. They now call it illnesses of undisclaimed or undisclosed origin or something like that. But it's all the same thing. And again, let me say what the Vietnam veterans motto is. Never again will one veteran abandon another. And that's the way we feel about it. If you're a World War II veteran, a Korean veteran, we don't care. You don't have to belong to our organization to get help. Just come on in, and we'll do our best to see that you get everything that the law allows you to have as quickly as possible.
Thank you.
You have a question?
I've got a question, Tony. I didn't have the privilege of serving in Vietnam, but in general, are there any no, I wouldn't say diseases, but symptoms, irregularities, whatever the word is that Vietnam veterans have that they do not associate with their Agent Orange. And then when they talk to people, they say, "Oh, really? This has something to do with that?" Do you come across anything like that?
Not really.
Okay.
I don't really understand what you're saying here.
I'm
What you're
saying
saying is that
if I get headaches, and I never associated with, and somebody finally says, that could be because of that, and after 20 years I say, nobody ever told me this.
well, one of the things that you hear a lot about is tinnitus, the ringing in your ears, and things like that. Uh, that's can be taken and reported. Headaches and things like that. You have to be able to show that something you were someplace or something happened that would cause that to go back that far. And some doctor is going to have to come up with this is the basic cause of it. For is if a doctor to look at it and talk to him, he'll give you a reason why you have it. And once you have that reason and you don't know where else to go and you want to find out whether it's service connected or not, talk to your service officer. He'll let you know whether it is or not. Now, headaches, I don't know. I guess everybody gets headaches at some time or another.
That was just something that I couldn't think of anything else. I mean, I didn't mean to say.
Well, Tony, you're talking about tendonitis. I suffer from tendonitis myself, and been talking to other vets, and it just kind of surprised me that how many Vietnam vets do have problems with tendonitis. I never connected Vietnam and tendonitis. It's just something I thought us old people got, but it seems to be very, not word popular in Vietnam for Vietnam vets, but it seems to be very prevalent in Vietnam vets that we do have tendonitis. That's the kind of things that you get together and talk to other vets and so forth. We've always said unless you were there, you can't really talk about it. And we get together and tell lies and so forth as veterans, as some of them do, and have a good time telling stories. And you come up with things like, we all got tendonitis. I mean, there's probably other things out there that can be associated with Agent Orange or service problems that we don't even know about.
Well, when we talk about tinnitus, I'm pretty much deaf, and it's service connected. But if you have tinnitus and you were in Vietnam and you got a combat infantry badge, or you were a place where you were being bombarded with incoming shells, or you were in combat, the loud snapping noises and the cracking of the guns and the explosions can cause tinnitus. And tinnitus is something that, they say you have to have it all the time, but the studies show that it can come and go. It stays with you for a while and then it goes away, but then it comes back. Sometimes it stays forever. Sometimes it doesn't show up for years. Now, your records show Vietnam and you were around explosives. You're going to have to write a statement in support of your claim saying, I did this, this, and this, and the noise was there and explosives were there. And then when I came home, I worked in an office where nobody talked for 20 years. So there was no noise that could cause you to have the tinnitus or something like that in civilian life. So the doctor or the audiologist can say he has tinnitus. There is no absolute test to say tinnitus is there, but there are ways that they can determine whether you have it or not. And so then they can say it's likely is not caused by your association in the military where loud noises and gunfire was. Yeah. And you can put in for that. Now, there's other things, that you have to realize this, that when you come in with some disease or some illness or some problem, you're on a determined part of your military career. Could it have happened while you were in service? Could it have been caught while you were in service? All of these things have to be looked at and evaluated, and that's why a service officer is there. He knows or she knows exactly what can be done and what cannot be done, and what can be service connected, and all of that stuff. That's why we're here.
Well, appreciate, we're running short on time now. Appreciate you being on with us tonight, Tony. We really, you have really put out some great information. It's going to help a lot of people. Like I said, it's archives, so people can go back in and see it later, as well as those who were tuned in tonight. Just want to tell everybody that have a nice Thanksgiving. We have one more show before Christmas. It's December 10th. We will have a Marine combat photographer in on the show, and then we're going to take a break because the 24th will be our next show, which is Christmas Eve, and we got to look out for Santa Claus and his sled. So we will probably not be doing the show in December. We'll be back in January with a full show. Again, thank all of y'all for tuning in. Well, the next month is December the 10th is the only one show we have. As far as we have those of you who are locally, if you're going to be here in Raleigh during December 14th, we'd like to invite you to our candlelight service. We have met the first Saturday of every month for the last 27 years at the state capitol with the Vietnam Memorial to call out the names of the POW MIA still unaccounted for from North Carolina. We started out with 65, now we're down to 41. We actually had a remains brought in last night to RD Airport. Sergeant McNeil was, we lost him in Laos. He was, so his remains came in last night at Rotterdam Airport. The first Saturday, which would be December the 6th, we'll be doing our normal monthly POW ceremony. As I said, the 14th, we'll be doing our special candlelight service at 6 o'clock in the evening. If you've never been to one, you ought to come. It's very moving. Bob and I just came back from Boston with Joe Harsh. We did a symposium, as I mentioned a while ago, to all the teachers. So there's lots of things going on for veterans in the area, and we'd like for everybody to come join us. Again, thank you for VBA. VBA Chapter 530 out of Durham has helped sponsor this. We've had, of course, Ross and Nance has helped us. And, of course, you were invaluable tonight, Joe. And Tony, excuse me, I don't know where Joe came. I got Joe Harsh on my mind. Bob, you want to say something real quick before you end up?
I'd like to say, Tony, on behalf of Lessons of Vietnam and your bridge back, welcome home. And thank you.
Thank you, and you welcome, too.
There you go.
And let's all get together. After all, we're all in this together. We're a band of brothers that were kind of bastardized. I guess I shouldn't have said that, but we were kind of bastardized when we came home. And we're starting to wake up a little bit, and let's make a little bit of noise and take care of our kids, our grandkids, and those guys that are now putting up with a lot of stuff in Iraq, Afghanistan, and Desert Storm. Let's get out there and help them, and let's make sure that nothing happens to them like that happened to us. Welcome home, everybody.
Anything we do now will help our men and women who stand up and go, I'm willing to give up everything for serving this country in the future, because there's going to be soldiers out there and veterans in the future.
Thank you, Tony.
Tuned to the Nissan Communications Network. Our weekly lineup of call-in programs includes Computers 2K Now with Amnon Nissan, Health In with Debbie Bruck, Breaking Free with Marilyn Shannon, Lessons of Vietnam with NCVVI members, The Tanya Love Show, Your Healthy Pet with Gisela DiCarlo. And if you tuned in too late, you can always watch each program in its entirety or download an MP3 audio file of it at www.nissancommunications.com. Sponsored by Atomus.com, makers of quality video recorders and converters for professionals, CarolinaApparel.com, and DeltaForce.net.